With F1 leaving a record crowd this weekend in Austin, they stay on the side of the pond and they go to Mexico. With that, lights out. Welcome aboard another edition of the F1 Starting Grid. Well, welcome to a very cool day here in Austin. Very nice, very beautiful. And we welcome, I can't believe I left the names on there, but Mike, the points leader, Alan. That was, I have to say, that was one hell of a race.
That was a fun race to watch. It was a fun race to watch, and it was everything it was billed to be. And I'm glad there wasn't any unnecessary crashes or anything to ruin it. And it was just it was an exciting race. Well done, Austin, Texas. Well done.
Yes, very much so. And I was listening to some pundits beforehand here on YouTube and other places. They said this is not going to. A good bit of them said this is not going to be an exciting race, but I have to tell you, it came down to the last lap, last corner, last second. This is exactly what a season should be. This is exciting. That's one of the reasons. I think there's three reasons why they had a record-breaking crowd this weekend. Not just for Formula, it was record-breaking crowd for this year for Formula One itself, but a record-breaking crowd here at COTA, and the largest crowd this year in the United States and possibly in the Western Hemisphere. 400,000 people showed up. One thing in particular is, of course, we give credit to Netflix Drive to Survive that brought in quite a bit of fans that were usually Formula One fans, but quite a bit of people here from Canada due to the Canadian Grand Prix being canceled. Mm-hmm. And once again, said before, this is an exciting season. So years past, normally Lewis Hamilton has the season wrapped up. People's like, yeah, I don't need to go. We don't need to see it. It's already been called Lewis Hamilton's the championship this year. This not this season. We have a contested season so far. I love it. It was a little over a second that Max won, and this is his first win in the United States Grand Prix. And I have to watch that thing over and over and over again. It was just, I was sitting on the edge of my seat. I don't know about you, Mike.
Well, it came down to two great racers and who's going to make a mistake, and it was Hamilton that made the mistake, and it was very subtle, and a lot of people didn't catch it until after the race. But like with two laps left, he was closing in on a second to catch up to Verstappen, and he came around, I think it was the corner right before the last corner, and his back end slipped out and he lost half a second, and that last lap he just couldn't make it up. But that was the mistake right there, and it was exciting.
Well, very exciting. I enjoyed every minute of this, and I have to get also credit to two other teams that also battled it out. That's Ferrari and McLaren.
Oh yeah,
I just could not get over how Carlos Sainz did not give up, or tried not to give up places, especially in the very first lap. And that's one of the commentators said, this is just the first lap. This is not the last lap. Yeah. That, McLaren's trying to take over. Lando lost a couple spots because of the try to take over. I think it was turn 12. And it was just exciting. Charles Leclerc, he was 10 seconds behind Sergio in the last couple laps, but he was making a charge for that third spot. And he if he got like a few more laps in, I think he would probably be able to take Sergio. But Sergio also, that's another one I have to talk about right quick. I want to get your opinion on McLaren and Ferrari first there, Mike.
Well, it was a great battle. And those are two good teams that are trying to take over that number 3 spot. And, the way the race played out, they weren't really a factor in the leaders. They were so far back. But so it was almost like watching two races, and that's what was really exciting about this whole thing. It was like you were watching two, maybe even 3 races. Because even further back in the pack, they had those great battles back there with Vettel, just trying to get into the points and stuff like that. So, but yeah, McLaren is in. McLaren and Ferrari right now are just trying to be that number 3. To set themselves up for next year and set themselves up to get some momentum. And I'm still I can't put the words together how exciting that race was. And I was watching about 30 minutes behind live. I got back, and so I was trying not to tweet. I was trying not to look at Twitter. I was trying not to get on social media. I was just trying to enjoy the moment, and it was amazing.
Speaking about how close it is, I mean, right now between Mercedes and Red Bull, there is roughly a 23 point. Yeah, it is a 23 point difference. Mercedes is ahead just by that much. The closest battle between constructors right now is McLaren and Ferrari, and they're only separated by 3.5 points.
Yeah, that's almost more exciting than the Red Bull Mercedes battle, to be honest with you. And it's two storied teams and four great drivers, all right there in the mix at the end of every race. So it's the last 6 races are going to be fun.
Oh, it's going to be fantastic. Let me talk about this too. Checo, on lap 1, his drink went out. And there was this, I don't know if you saw it on Twitter or not, but there's these several memes where Heineken is probably one of the major sponsors of Formula One, and they have like, don't drink and drive. And Checo has to be reminded of that every single lap,
Yeah, and the fact that he still fought through it and had the race that he had, and a lot of people don't really realize, just think, well, you lose your drink, that's, who cares? You're only out there for a couple hours, but the physicality it takes to drive one of those cars and push back against the G-forces and muscle them around those curbs, they're athletes. And like any athlete, tell a football player he can't go through a full game without drinking a Gatorade or a water when he comes off the field or during a break. I mean, that's basically what he did. He did a full 2-hour workout with no hydration. So that's pretty incredible.
Well, there was a scene where Lewis was talking to one of his engineers right after the race, right before the podium. Checo was sitting off to the side there, and he was so fatigued that he could barely stand. He was trying to drink as much as possible, but slowly possible too, because you don't want to drink too much at one time.
Yep, trying to hydrate. Yep,
trying to rehydrate and everything. And it was just so dehydrated, But man, props off to him. And his home race is not this week, but next. And we're going to do picks next week, but it's just something to see how much he's been pushing the last couple of weeks.
Well, and he's being a good number 2 to Verstappen's championship run, and that's just a real big compliment to the sportsmanship that he has and how he understands, his role in Red Bull and in racing in general. But I would love to see Sergio win in Mexico. I would love to see that, and that would be Perez Verstappen. With Hamilton wrecking out in the 3rd lap. I don't know. Just.
Well, every man can dream. I mean,
that would be cool. That would be cool for him to podium in Mexico, though, because he deserves it. Mexico loves him, and
absolutely.
He is absolutely a great ambassador to the sport.
Well, on that note, I think you talk about Valtteri there for a minute. He placed 6th, and he was 8th on the starting grid because of
ninth. Yeah,
because of another power unit change. I mean, this is the second one within weeks, but he made up spots to go up to 6th. But I really didn't see, and this probably they were focused more on the McLaren Ferrari battle, but I didn't see too much out of Bottas other than the pass over Carlos. I don't know about you.
Yeah, that's that was the only time he was really even featured in the race that I can remember, was that short little battle to get by. What's his name?
Carlos.
but he wasn't really a factor because there was such a one thing about this race that I noticed is that there was such a spread between the cars. So it was,
Yeah.
it was close. And the impression is that you get all these cars are bunched up, but there was almost half a minute between second and third place. That's a lot. And yeah, Hamilton and Verstappen were close there in the end, but Perez wasn't even around the top of the horn before when they crossed the finish line. So Bottas was stuck in the middle, so far back from the car in front of him and so far in front of the car he passed that he never was really in a position to have to do anything but pass the back markers, and that's they get out of your way anyway. So there wasn't really a storyline to go along with him because the cars were so spread out. And I think that happens, they only had, two virtual safety cars, and I don't even think they had a safety car. Yep. I mean, there wasn't an incident where it bunched everybody up again. So, that the cars were so spread out over the course of the race that there wasn't really a whole lot of battles to cover.
No, as you pointed out, there's two safety cars. I think it was just one by Kimi because both times cars just ran off the road.
Yeah, they're just virtual safety cars. Yeah,
right. No damage. There was some bumps and stuff like that. Like on turn one, there was I think a bump between Fernando Alonso. No, it was Ocon and
and then Pierre Gasly. Pierre Gasly, had to retire because his car was damaged. But
that's unfortunate. Both Alpines, my pick. both Alpines were out. They couldn't take the track. I guess I don't know.
Well, what was my extra that Mazepin wouldn't be lapped, and he was lapped like 10 laps.
At least one Haas would not be lapped, but both of them were.
Oh, multiple times.
Yeah.
Multiple times. I don't even think they finished the race. I think the race was over, and they're like, "Yeah, I'll just come on in. You can keep going if you want to, but no one cares." That was my biggest disappointment of the race is that the Williams cars fell off as far as they did. They were really making strides and really up there in the mid group and pushing points and I think they finished. Well, I think the last four cars were two Williams and two Haas.
Well, Williams finished back and back one of the 14th and 15th, and Haas right behind them, 16 and 17.
Yeah, and then they had the retirement. So I hated to see that because they made so many strides.
Yeah.
To get back into competitiveness, and it just kind of fell apart for them this weekend. And they were talking to kid that's going to Mercedes.
Oh, George Russell.
George Russell. I don't know why I can't think of his names. They were talking to George after the race, and he was talking about how hot the track was and the tires and, the normal stuff that racers complain about when they have a bad showing. But that disappointed me. I was kind of hoping Williams would kind of keep their nose stuck up in there. Maybe it was the track. Maybe it was, the situation. But I think a big part of it is that they didn't have any stoppages, and they had no actual safety cars come out to slow everybody down. So when you get spread out like that, you're exposed. You really find out who's got the better car when you go a whole race without a safety car, when everybody just pushes their car, and to see how far ahead Red Bull and Mercedes is from the rest of the pack next year is going to be interesting when everybody's kind of put back in a level playing field. That's kind of looking forward to it, but they have a superior machine right now.
You pointed out something there too. If they had an actual safety car, an actual incident that needed, everybody slowed down, I think Lewis would probably have won. However, just as you said, just virtual safety car. I mean, pound for pound, going in for tires at the right time. Red Bull just came out on top. I mean, just that much, but Red Bull did come out on top, and that's saying something about Christian Horner and that team calculating how. Because even the commentators are saying, I think they went in too soon. I think they went in too soon, but to come to find out.
Well, and it came down to that mistake, like I mentioned before. Hamilton made the mistake; he blinked, and it was subtle. And if you weren't quite paying attention, you'd have missed it. It happened within a fraction of a second, but he lost his back end around the curb, and that scrubs a lot of power and a lot of pace off your car, and that was the difference. Because if he hadn't have done that, he'd have been right on Verstappen's tail there at the end, but he lost that half a second. That's all it took. But I think you're right. I think with a safety car, it may have turned out differently. It very well could have turned out differently, and I think we would have had a lot more shuffling around in the mid pack, and then even in third place, had everybody gotten bunched up again. So,
so let's get this out of the way. And as per his little handle there on the screen, you see it. I'm just waiting for the moments here. I don't know if I should play this or not, but let's go ahead.
Yeah.
So there you go, Mike. 449.5. I'm behind you by 19 points, 430. And Chaz, with his picks, is staying stagnant for the moment, 390. So that's something. While we're doing this, might as well show you this. This is we talked about Bottas and his situation of pull this up right quick. Sorry about that. And his situation with the podiums and Chaz's picks. So he did not do too much this weekend, so he stayed right at that moment at 2 podiums. With 5 races to go, you will have to have at least 3 more podiums for Chaz to get the extra 100 points. So we'll see about that.
He's perfectly capable of doing it.
Yeah.
They got. I wonder how much different this race would be had he not lost all those places and started ahead of Perez on the grid, because it would have been Verstappen, Hamilton, Bottas, and he got dinged all those spots for his engine change. But how different would this race have been if it had been 2 Mercedes chasing Verstappen instead of just 1?
Ooh. And
with no safety car.
And no safety car. And Checo right there too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, it would have been those 4 cars really battling it out. So that would have been interesting for sure.
And Bottas is really good in Mexico and Brazil, so we'll see what happens when it comes out.
Now, he has a shot.
Very good shot.
All he has to do is podium, right? He doesn't have to win. He just has to get on the podium. Yeah.
Just get on the podium. In fact, I want to pose something to you. I don't know if you want to take this bet or not, too, since I posed this at Chaz, so I'm going to pose this to you, Mike. And you don't have to give me the answer now. Just think for about a week until next week in Mexico. And that is George Russell. Out of the next 5 races, George Russell will finish in points 3 times. If he does, you get an extra 100 points. If not, you lose 100 points.
Before this race, I probably would have taken that bet, but I don't know now. I'm going to have to think on that because
you got a week.
They were exposed. They were exposed this race.
Well, you got a week to think about it. We'll revisit that when we come back next week.
All right.
In the meantime, I want to talk about this too. We were supposed to talk about this last week, and it's a very interesting track. Just like with Saudi Arabia, I would have to probably see it in person to get a real notice about it, but I'm not too sure about Qatar. And it is a MotoGP track, and kind of reminds me, and I'm going to probably share this here too again, kind of reminds me of, I don't know, a little bit of Bahrain mixed with Spain. And it is a very narrow track too, so there's not going to be too much overtaking, at least from what it looks like.
Is this the track that they modified last year because they ran 2 races on it, and they cover the top or something like that? Or is that, am I thinking something?
Not this one. No, that was Bahrain. That
was Bahrain. Okay.
Give it probably a little better angle here. Sorry about that. Let me see. It helps if I go to practice here, but that's it right there. See, it kind of favors Bahrain, the inner track, as well as Spain a little bit. That, I don't know. Said before, I probably just have to look at it from when they race on it, but it's supposed to be a very narrow track. It's a MotoGP track. Motorbikes race on this. So.
Yeah, it's the motor. If you bring up that last picture, you can see all the runoffs where the motorcycles, they give room for motorcycles to skid. Yeah, so it's a safe track. I mean, they're not right on top of a barrier, but
right.
I can only see a couple of places where people can overtake. So qualification is going to. Are they going to do a sprint qualification for this one too, or no?
No, it's going to be a regular qualification. The next sprint race is going to be the final one for the season. Is going to be in Brazil.
Brazil. Yeah, I mean, qualification is going to be everything for this, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So for the mid teams, you're going to hope for at least 2 safety cars to keep everybody bunched up to give people a shot. It's not going to, being it's so skinny, they do have a lot of long straightaways, so a lot of DRS zone. I think it's got 4 DRS zones. So. People, it's going to be an interesting race. I don't know. I don't think anything can top Austin at this point, but
no, that was incredible. I mean, so far, I mean, probably other than Spain, the tracks that were projected to be like sleeper races have come out and just like, just blown us away. Even Russia was a fantastic race, in my opinion, this year. But I just don't know about this track. I know it's exciting because there's another track on the calendar. So we'll have, I think 22 or 23 races this season. So it's fantastic to have that. I just don't know about that. I said before, I probably see it just like Saudi Arabia. I'm not too crazy about either one of them, but we'll see.
Are they racing at night too, I think they're racing at night too, aren't they?
I don't know about that either.
I think all the ones that are in the Arabias over there in the desert, they all race them at night because it's too hot during the day.
Oh, it is. It is. So that I think they probably will race at the night, which makes it nice. Very, very beautiful track. Lit up at night. And that's one thing I look forward to. Abu Dhabi too is that change. They made a couple of changes to their track, so hopefully it'll be better. It'll be a much exciting race over there.
And I really like Abu Dhabi. That's the one that's kind of down in the city, and they got the big towers and the lights and they really put on a good show there, and that's a beautiful track, just a gorgeous track.
It is very new, just like Austin, paved really well, and there's actually
waiting to get our media passes there, Brian. I got my passport in the safe, so I'm just saying.
Me too.
Well,
we got that down.
A media pass and a Learjet to get us over there. I mean, how hard can that be, right? What's the show's budget again? What's our budget?
It's called Lawrence Stroll. Hey, buddy. We need
have your G4 swing by Austin and pick us up at the executive airport, will you?
Speak about money. We want our final story here, and that's over the weekend here in Austin. It was reported that Andrade has pulled out as far as the bid for Sauber because Sauber has raised their price tag. I didn't agree with Frank, who's the president of Sauber, raising the price tag at the very last minute, but overall, the reason why, I understood why, and I'll get that to here in a minute. The price tag now with a down payment of $250 million is roughly, give or take the one, is roughly about $60 million or $600 million is the price tag for Sauber that Andrade would have to pay. First off, your take on that, Mike.
Well, one of two things happened. Either Saab decided they didn't want to sell or didn't want Andretti to buy it, so they raised the price knowing that he wouldn't go after it, or they got greedy and they gave up $1 to make a dime. So, gave up how's it go? Gave up a dime to make $1. I think I had it right the first time.
Yep.
But either way, be a strong contender before you start throwing around money like that. At least have a plan together to where you're going to be competing against the Mercedes, the Red Bulls, the Ferraris, and the McLarens before you start throwing around raising prices and stuff like that. So, I'm not in that realm. I don't have the experience. I don't own an F1 team. Outside of being a fan, all I can do from the outside is give my opinion. But from the looks of it, either they decided they didn't want to sell to Andretti, so they raised the price so he wouldn't buy, which is what I think is where I'm leaning, or somebody got greedy and decided that Andretti could afford it, so they tried to raise the price.
Well, come to find out, and indulge me.
But I'm leaning towards my first assessment only because the second one would take competitiveness, and right now they're not very competitive.
Well, to indulge you and give me a moment here to explain, but you're absolutely right. Your first take on it is correct. Sauber didn't really want to sell. Frank, he did not really want to sell because of the potential reason, and you pointed this out as far as you have to be a contender. Starting next season and on through 2023, 2024, you have the budget cap coming. And that's what he's looking at. I heard somebody say this. It's every team starting next season, if they're wise, if they're smart enough, not necessarily will be, but has the potential to be successful. Every single team, as far as money. Because the budget cap is going down to $145 million, they'll have enough money to be competitive with. And Frank has announced there's going to be even more sponsors coming in for Sauber. And if you look at it too, if Andretti would come in, the Sauber name will go by. Just like Haas came in, when they bought it, the other team would buy. Mm-hmm. And so Sauber think, I want another American team in there, but not at the expense of Sauber, because Sauber has, rich history to it. And with what Frank was explaining as far as, he wants that potential to be successful and extra money coming in for that team. That's the reason why he didn't sell. And even Toto Wolff echoed that sentiment. He said, if I was in Frank's shoes, I would not sell either. Because with that new salary cap coming in, Ineos has bought 1/3 of the Mercedes team, and in turn, Toto Wolff bought 3% of that team as well. Frank has the potential for other investors to come in to do that as well. Mm-hmm. So, with that explanation too, and we talked about this, I want to get into also a little bit broader subject on this too, because I know we talked about this to an extent. But first off, of a price tag of $600 million. Andrade could bring in their own F1 team with a couple other sponsors, with their own power unit. Granted, you would have to probably put a facility somewhere outside of London or Germany or something like that. But with that price tag, they could come in with their own team, which 11 teams, I welcome that. I don't know about you, Mike.
Well, the more the merrier, for sure. And it would be good to have another team, another couple teams, and I'm with you. You know, I think we need an American driver,
Hmm.
and I'll tell you what else we need. And this might be controversial, uh, and I'm glad that they had Danica Patrick as one of the commentators this weekend. I really think that F1, and I think it's going to be a catalyst in this is Lewis Hamilton and his group that's developing young drivers, and because they're developing all drivers. He's got a lot of girl drivers, women drivers that are in that program. I would love to see a female F1 driver. Uh, Not only would it be good for the sport, but I think it would be good just from a humanitarian standpoint to be able to break through that and glass ceiling and have a competitive female driver. I mean, there's been a female F1 driver before back in I think the late 90s, maybe early 2000s. I'd have to go back and look. Briefly, there was a couple of female drivers that were in F3, and I think one of them drove a couple of F1 races. I'll have to go back and look. I might be wrong. But that would be cool to see that. But we definitely need another American driver.
Yeah.
Jump out of a NASCAR and into an F1 car.
Well, I forgot who it was, but there was a driver of somewhere from the Middle East area that she is actually driving for F3, if I'm not mistaken. Right
Yes.
now.
Yeah.
So she's not great, but she's very competitive. So I think that's something to look at as well. I agree with you on that. Now we talked extensively about this, but since the subject is up to with Andrade coming in, possibly bringing another power unit, I won't say that. I think that's still open for them to do that. And the new cost-cutting measures coming in, that welcomes another team. It brings up questions also about Williams. We talked about this also extensively about Williams possibly.
What would be a great pairing? Williams and Ford.
You mentioned that before. Yeah.
I'm going to keep someone's going to stumble across our little show from Ford and go, you know what, that Mike Allen, that's exactly what we need in our life is Williams. But there was a time that F1 was powered by Ford engines, Codsworth engines. But to go back there's been five female F1 drivers. Maria Teresa De Filippis from 1958 to 59 drove for Maserati. Leah Lombardi, 74 to 76, drove for Williams. Davina Galicia, 76 to 78 for Hesketh Racing. If for those of you who might recognize that name, that was the name from I don't know why I'm having a hard time with names today. Because it's the middle of my night, that's why. The Rush, the two drivers.
Oh yes, Niki Lauda and James Hunt.
James Hunt. That was James Hunt is actually the one that started Heth's racing. And then Desiree Wilson in 1980 for Williams. And then the latest one, the one I was thinking of, was Giovanna Amati in 1992 for Brabham. So 5 female F1 drivers.
Well, if Andrade was smart, they probably bring in Ford if they come in.
Yeah. I'd like to see Ford back in F1. I think it's time.
Well, we talked about this too extensively about possibly there's a very good chance that Volkswagen will come in about 2024, 2025. And that will be an awesome fit for Williams. And I'll tell you why. They brought in some new people in this year because of the buyout. A couple of them have actually have experience working with Volkswagen in their racing development platforms. So that opens the door for Volkswagen to come in with either Audi or Porsche into Williams and get out of the umbrella of Mercedes. I understand you have to have a tier team, and a tier team is where drivers from F2, F3 come in for a couple of years to go into the top team like Ferrari, Red Bull, Mercedes. Williams has too much history to be a tier team, and I understand they needed Mercedes' help because they were under financial distress for a while. But it's time. It's almost time with a new team, a new buyout, new everything, to get out underneath the umbrella of Mercedes and into what they're supposed to be, a winning team by themselves. And
you know who
that's my
supplies
soapbox for the week.
and you know who supplies engines to Volkswagen?
Who's that?
Dodge. And that would be awesome too. I mean, they'd be broke down all the time, and you'd have to get parts replaced and everything. But hey,
We talked about this too. Mopar, a possible Mopar coming into Formula One, a possible Ford coming into Formula One. I just love in the grid right now where it stands. You could have a max of 13 teams. That's 6 more drivers, 6 more cars on the grid, 3 more different power units on the grid, which I absolutely love. And I think that's what the sports needs in addition to whatever other changes they're bringing in with the cost cutting cap and sprint races, trying to drum up other type of ways for people to watch, including Drive Survive. I think bringing in new power units into the fold, as a big fan I am of Ferrari and of Williams, of the history they have, I also think you need to bring in new blood, and that's just not drivers, that's power units.
and it wouldn't be a big stretch for Chevrolet to throw their hat in the mix either, since they're 50% of the Indy cars right now are Chevy and Honda. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't. They already have kind of the engineering expertise in building Indy cars with power plants and everything. So I wouldn't mind the big 3 American automakers maybe getting in there and mixing it up a little bit. That would harken back to the days of a NASCAR when you had Dodges and Fords and Chevys, and that was as big as much of that race back in the day as Mercedes and Red Bull and Honda and Ferrari are now with F1. And I think the more constructors we get involved, the more engines we get involved. Especially with the salary cap now, I think it'll be more than affordable enough. It'll be affordable enough for the automakers. I think the thing that's going to hurt, and we've discussed this before, the thing that's going to hurt all this, and the reason why Honda's leaving is this big push now for electric cars. And I think it's going to take a few years of that pendulum swinging in that direction before people realize that electric cars are a bigger footprint economically, or not economically, environmentally, they're a bigger footprint than gas cars.
Yeah.
People haven't realized that yet. An electric car may be fine for not having exhaust, but in order to power that car, it's a bigger environmental footprint than it would be just to put a gas tank and clean up the emissions on an existing car. So hopefully that trend slows down, because there's nothing like a roar of a internal combustion engine on a Sunday afternoon, whether it's in a NASCAR, an Indy car, or an F1 car, or out in a desert, on an enduro race, or even the motorcycles. If anybody's ever been to a MotoGP race, those are just as fun to watch, and they're loud and they're crazy, and you can't get that out of an electric car.
No, absolutely.
If anybody's ever watched Formula E, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's like, it's just not the same.
No.
It won't get your adrenaline rushing like a turbo powered V6 screaming with a 3-inch exhaust pipe going 200 plus miles an hour.
But to that point, Mike, if Ferrari has his way, and even though they're going to more of cleaner engine fuel and power units, Ferrari will never go electric.
No.
So Formula One probably will never go electric. That's probably one of the reasons why they started Formula E, because they know that Formula One itself will never go electric, at least for anytime soon, because of Ferrari.
Well, I don't think it'll go electric. I don't think, I've had this conversation before where people say, it's been brought up that in 5 years we won't have any more internal combustion engines and it'll all be electric, and that's a nice fantasy for somebody to have, especially an environmentalist. But it's never going to happen ever. I think with the improvements on the engine and the emissions and gasoline technology, we're cleaner now than we've ever been in the history of our planet. And there's no financial way that you can sustain an electric mobility plan anywhere without internal combustion engines, because you're going to need a gas generator, or you're going to need coal turbines, or you're going to need some sort of way to create the electricity to charge the batteries. And that's all done by engines, by mechanical internal combustion engines or coal burning engines. So, I think it's nice for people to want to have an electric car. I hope one day that my financial situation gets to the point where I can buy a Tesla, because they're absolutely fantastic to drive and they're a fantastic automobile. But in my current situation, I've went mobile and I've got a big fifth wheel, and there's not an electric truck right now that can pull this thing. But that Ford F-350 out there can. And that's a big old V8 turbo diesel, and that's what it takes to pull this thing. And I have a buddy of mine that wants to buy the Tesla truck to pull his RV, and everybody at Tesla's like, "Don't do it. It's not powerful enough. It just doesn't have the torque."
Well, I know Ford's coming up with a electric truck too soon.
Yeah. The F1, the E150, I think they're calling it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, I didn't get a chance to go to this, but the past couple of weekends, on top of, Formula One being here, there's a couple film festivals here in town. But Ford had like a display in the middle of downtown in their park here in Austin, and they had like a little small track where, you own trucks and you get I think a Bronco, and you go up and it's like a real steep hill and try to make it over and stuff like that. It's like a nice little theme park area they developed there, and it was pretty nice. And I think the electric truck was there, if I'm not mistaken. I know the electric Mustang was there.
Which doesn't look like a Mustang.
No, it doesn't.
And this is just a shout out to all my manufacturers making electric cars. Do you know why Tesla is so popular? Because it doesn't look ridiculous. If you're going to make an electric car, don't make it look ridiculous. Make it look like a car. I mean, it's not that big of a stretch. The first electric cars that came out looked ridiculous. No one's going to be caught dead driving. We're motorheads. Make it look like a nice car. And that's why Teslas are popular, because they look like nice cars. That Ford Mustang, the electric Mustang, doesn't even look like a Mustang. So you're not gonna be able to draw in the enthusiasts that love Mustangs with a car that doesn't look like a Mustang. A buddy of mine owns one. It's a nice car, but it doesn't look like a Mustang. When I look at it, I don't see Mustang. I see, well, it's a funny looking electric car.
Funny little electric car there.
Yeah. That you need to plug into a power source that's power generated by a internal combustion engine.
Certainly is. I'm so glad we were able to talk about this week and just get that off of our chest. But next week, not this week, but next we have the Mexican Grand Prix, and right after that we have the Brazilian Grand Prix. We head back over the pond into the Middle East for 3 other races. So we got 5 races left this season before the new changes of 2022 era come in, and we say goodbye to the hybrid era. So it'll be very interesting to see. So please make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Make sure you check out our Twitter poll of the week. Don't pay mind to Mike. The race is not over yet. We still got time. We still got time.
I took 3 weeks off, and you still couldn't pass me.
And on that note, we'll see you next time right here on the F1 Starting Grid. Thank you.